Hey, good morning, everybody. Glad to be back with you on this third Saturday morning in October. Um, and hello, fall. My name is Ed Samuel. I'm a career coach with a firm called Sam Nova. We're based in Kennett Square, PA, and serve clients in the greater Philadelphia area and across the U.S. I hope and pray that you and your family are safe in the midst of this pandemic that we're working ourselves through here. From a job standpoint, a job market standpoint, I still see challenges out there, um, but I also continue to see people land jobs, and some very recently, including many of my clients, have landed. A scientist within the last week, and a senior HR leader as of this morning. So there are places that continue to hire. Um, Jobs continue to get posted, and I mentioned on several occasions in the last couple of months that unlike the recovery in 2008 that took place, what's really neat to see is how many places are looking for recruiters. And when you see a lot of recruiting openings, that means somebody has to be hiring because they wouldn't be asking for so many. So that's always a good sign that and it's a pleasant one to see. And for those people who are making career pivots, that's a potential career pivot for someone to take. And I had a client this year actually make that career pivot and went into recruiting out of the I would say the music industry. Now they're doing recruiting. So, but it's still highly competitive, right? So everything from your resume and how you interview and virtual interviewing and how you approach your job search and the hidden job market, all those things are incredibly important. And most importantly, in this environment that we're in, do not, under any circumstance, make any assumptions about anything. Because I can't tell you the number of people that I work with, talk to, whether they be my clients, and I work with hundreds and hundreds of other people who aren't clients who are looking for work. And many times, you'll hear someone say, "Hey, Ed, I got these things going," but just because things are going doesn't mean they're going to close. So again, be very careful about making assumptions. I'll be speaking on a cable TV channel in a few weeks, and I'll be also at several larger regional events. And if you're listening and you know what LinkedIn is, and you're on LinkedIn, but you're not connected to me, I urge you to it's pretty easy to find me on LinkedIn. Just go to Google, put in Ed Samuel, Samuel, career coach, LinkedIn. I'll come up on the first page of Google. Connect with me on Google, and then follow my posts, and you'll see some of the places I'll be speaking next in the weeks ahead. But this morning, I really wanted to spend some time talking about this topic called, "Hey, Ed, how do you find a hiring manager? Why do you want to find a hiring manager when you're in a job search?" And so let's start off with more of a grounding on why you really do want to find a hiring manager. And here's some reasons why. A lot of people will say, and you hear it all the time, "Hey, Ed, I posted, for this position. I applied for this position on this posting, and it was a perfect fit. Nothing has happened. I mean, nothing." And many times, when you apply for something, right? I don't care what company it is, and I've led a large recruiting team in a large multi-billion-dollar company, so I know how it works internally. But when you apply online, you're 100% dependent on HR, that internal recruiter, moving you forward in the process. And if they have hundreds of resumes, you may not even get looked at. So, I looked at one stat a few years back. It was hard to believe, and it said for every job in America, there's 300 applicants. Now, I thought it was high, but even if it was 100 applicants, that's high. I worked at a firm where, if we posted a position for 1 week, we'd get 125 applicants. Goodness forbid, if we left that job up for 2 or 3 weeks, we'd have 500 resumes. But therein, lies the problem. What about you? You applied, you think you're a great fit for the role. You might even meet all the minimum requirements. And that's for a different topic at a different time. But you meet all the minimum requirements. You applied, and then nothing happens. So now, you have to remember that, the HR recruiter, the internal recruiter, they want to fill the position as quickly as possible. And but they're not uniquely thinking about you. They're not saying, hey, I'm going to champion Sue's cause. I'm going to champion Bob's cause. I'm going to go through all the resumes, and I'll really give you a hard look. You also have to remember, but their goal is, to get it filled as quickly as possible. The other thing is you're not paying them to champion your cause. See, they're doing the best that they can, and I'm not, trying to, make them look bad as much as it's just inherently part of the process that creates this thing called the black hole. The other stat that came out this week, I think beginning of this week, was a company, I believe in Ohio, published a post that said 7.4 seconds is all you have to make an impression on that resume. So when you're a recruiter, you get hundreds of resumes. They take a quick look at 7.4 seconds. I used to say it's 7.5 seconds. So now it's actually getting shorter. And good recruiters, they have 3 piles: a yes, a maybe, and a no. And 7 seconds, does it in terms of you getting into one of those piles. But now let's say you apply for the job on a Monday. A day goes by, 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, a month, 90 days. You hear nothing. You hear nothing. The question is, what do you do? What do you do? And making assumptions when you apply for a job is not a good thing as a rule. And people that know me or worked with me or have heard me speak before, it's just not a good practice. So, and what are some of the assumptions? What could be going on? They may not want me. That could be going through your head. Hey, they're going to hire somebody internally, most likely. That's why they didn't get back to me. Hey, the job was already filled. I just had one of those last week with one of my own clients. We finally found the hiring manager, and the job was posted. Within 3 days, it was already filled. But that maybe that happened. Hey, there's a delay going on with the job. Hey, they were going to fill it, and now it's been delayed. I see that so many times, especially with the bigger companies, just lumbering along. It just drives me crazy, but it still exists even in this stage that we're in. So you could have those big companies just lumbering along, taking their time. You could be their plan B. In other words, they already have the candidates lined up. You've applied, and if those plan A candidates don't work, then you might be plan B. Now, the other thing that happens is that they posted the job, you applied, the job's not even real. It's a ghost job. And there are firms and recruiting firms and companies that have a philosophy. I don't support it in any way, shape, or form, but the philosophy is keep a pipeline of candidates coming by posting ghost jobs. That could be happening. And then something else can happen. And a lot of people don't know this unless they've led a large recruiting firm, or even a small one for that matter. A lot of the recruiting systems, there's a little box that you have to check. When do you want this requisition to be taken down? And you check that box. Hey, I have candidates coming in. Everything looks good. But if you forget to uncheck the box, guess what happens? The job gets reposted again, and you're applying for it. Could that be happening? And there are some firms especially those that do business with the federal government, they're under a different set of scrutiny, different set of compliance and regulations when it comes to filling positions. And what that is that they have to be very careful of how they screen resumes. So here's just one example. Hey, they're going to post a position, and it's the one that you've applied for. But what they're going to do, they're going to post a position, and they're going to set a rule in place. And the rule that they put in place is we're only going to look at the first 40 resumes. That's it. So if they post a position, and at the end of the week they get 100 resumes, they literally will go through it in sequence. The first resume, the second, the third, the fourth, right up to 40, and then they stop. Now, if you applied, but you were number 50, 75, 100, you'll never get looked at. In other words, you will never get looked at all. And they're going to make the decision to hire somebody on those first 40. Now, if those first 40 don't turn out, they might say, okay, the rule of thumb is we're going to look at the next 40. But it's not random. Random can happen at smaller companies, private companies, companies that don't do business with the federal government. So I'm sharing these things that happen when you apply for a job, and any of these things could be happening. Sometimes you make assumptions, well, one of these things are happening, and that's why they're not getting back to me. But I'm going to make an argument for you this morning. Well, yeah, you're right. Every one of those things could possibly happen for a job that you apply for. Then you have a choice to make. You could go on and start applying for other jobs, or you could take the bull by the horns and say, hey, I'm going to go find the hiring manager, because I'm not going to rest my career, my fate of my family, my income on the process that Ed just explained to me. So you see, what I've tried to create here are all the reasons there's a black hole. And you only got a couple of choices: continue to play in it or circumvent it. And as a career coach, I help people circumvent black holes every single day. And I'm going to share with a few guidelines, because it's a much longer discussion than we have time for, but I'm going to give you some tips this morning that hopefully will help. But one more point. Don't make the fatal mistake. Hey, I'm going to, try to find the hiring manager, and I'm going to reach out to the recruiter, and they're going to tell me. I'm going to send an email to the recruiter. I'm going to send a LinkedIn message to the recruiter. The recruiter's a friend of mine. He or she will tell me. The HR manager is a friend of mine. He or she will tell me. And I will tell you, as a rule, it's usually a fatal mistake to reach out to the recruiter and wait for them to tell you the hiring manager's name. And it's not because they're bad people, and it's not because they don't want to help you, but many organizations and many recruiting operations, they train the recruiters to never tell somebody who the hiring manager is, because then you're going to circumvent their recruiting process. And see, that recruiting process is there to become efficient in trying to fill positions. But you got to understand that efficiency of filling positions has no value for you, quite honestly, unless you're the person they're picking and you become an active candidate. So what has to happen now is that, what I'm making a point on here is avoid reaching out to the recruiter, because most of the time they will never tell you. And there are some, and if they say, hey, I'll get back to you, don't hold your breath. Most will not tell you. So now let's talk about taking the bull by the horns. What does that look like in terms of finding a hiring manager? Well, let's go through it. And I'm going to go through, I think, 5 or 6 points here to give you some idea of how to go about doing this. So here's the first one. And it seems simple, but a lot of people won't do it or don't do it. But look at that job description very carefully. Every once in a while, the job description will be very specific in terms of who it reports to. For some of the private companies, they'll come out and just tell you, hey, I'm the hiring manager. And it's right on the posting. A lot of companies, though, will post a job description and it will tell you not necessarily the name of the person it reports to, but it will tell you the position it reports to. In other words, that hiring manager, their title. So, for example, a job description might say, okay, here's all the details. It's an engineering role. This position reports to the director of engineering for the power systems unit. Great. But now all you know, it reports to the director of engineering to the power systems unit at this particular firm. But there's a lot of questions that you need to still try to figure out. And there's some work that you have to do. Now, you need a LinkedIn account because LinkedIn can really help you. And if you have a lot of connections, it helps you a whole lot more. If you only have a few connections, it doesn't help you as much. Now, so here's one way of using LinkedIn. What you do is you look up the firm on LinkedIn. Go to the firm's landing page. So important. And people make the mistake of not going to the landing page correctly. And sometimes with some of the larger firms, people, if people create a LinkedIn profile and they don't align themselves to the proper name tied to the corporate landing page, you'll be looking for a hiring manager for a long time on LinkedIn. You'll never find them via the landing page because they actually connected themselves to a company that doesn't have a landing page. And it could be something as simple as one letter being misspelled. But let's assume the person we're looking for at this particular corporate landing page is actually part of that group of people. So you want to go to the landing page. You want to click on all employees. Once you do that, you want to filter it and go type in the title. Type in Director of Engineering. That may not tell you, you may not be able to then put in Power Systems Unit, but put in Director of Engineering. And then what happens is that 2 or 3 people might pop up. And if it's a larger company, yeah, you could have 2 or 3 directors of engineering in the Power Systems Unit at that firm. Now, if it's a smaller firm or it's a division and only one person pops up and that person has been there for 15 years and you don't see anybody else who's the director of engineering within the Power Systems Unit on that person's LinkedIn profile, there's a high likelihood that's the hiring manager. Now, if 2 or 3 people pop up, here's a mistake that's commonly made. I'm looking for a hiring manager. 2 or 3 people pop up. I think they all seem to be in the Power Systems Unit. They all seem to still be working there. And the mistake that's made is that, well, you go into freeze mode. Well, I'm not going to do anything now because I'm not sure who it is. And I'll tell you, let's go back to the black hole. I'd rather have you talk to 3 people than be dependent on having a black hole solve your problem. And my philosophy is simple. If you have 3 people, you're not sure who, pick one. Knock on their door. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? They hang up on you? They don't respond to your email? But I've had many clients over the years go to, take a stab at it. And they talk to someone who they thought was the hiring manager for that particular role that you applied for. And it wasn't. It was their peer down the hallway. And all they said is, oh, no. Sue Brooks, she's the hiring manager. Great, you write it down. You don't ask that person to do anything. Just write it down. Now you know who the hiring manager is. And off you go. I mean, think about it. You call them up, they hang up on you. They don't respond to an email. But at least you're trying to move the ball forward. You're putting a greater probability of you getting looked at by making this kind of effort. Is this easy? No. Is this nerve-wracking? Yes. Will it feel awkward? Sometimes. But remember, you're also, not an external recruiter. It's you who's making the phone call, and you believe you're uniquely qualified for that role that you applied for. You want to make an impression to a hiring manager. And ultimately, if that person is the hiring manager, that's the person you're going to interview with, whether it be a phone screen, but you're circumventing the pile of resumes. Now, if that person happens to be outside of LinkedIn, and that happens at times, you might be able to find them on the company website. But let's say they're outside of your LinkedIn network. Let's say that person made a spelling mistake when they put in their company name, and they're not even in the landing page, but there has to be a director of engineering there. So one thing to do would be go to Google, type in the company name, then type in the director of engineering, the title, and then put in Power Systems Unit, and then put in the words LinkedIn. You'd be amazed what Google can do for you to help you. Boom, next thing you know, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 names. And some of those names aren't even tied to your LinkedIn. You're like, scratch your head, well, where's this person come from? And if they're outside of your LinkedIn connections, for those of you who use LinkedIn a lot, it could be, somebody outside of your third connection, and you're not going to see a name. They'll just say LinkedIn member, right? You're not going to see anything, but if you Google it, you will be able to. So that's another way to find a hiring manager. Now let's make it a bit harder. You look at a job description, and there's nothing noted as to who it reports to. You might get a division name, the Power Systems Unit, but you don't even know who it reports to. See, at that point, what I encourage you to do is you have to kind of use old-fashioned logic. And old-fashioned logic is just kind of a framework of how hierarchy works in a traditional organization. So let me just use the accounting world as a starting point. And there's different variations of this. But, think about it is if you're an accounting clerk, right, you might report to an accountant. If you're an accountant, you might report to a senior accountant. If you're a senior accountant, you might report to an accounting manager. An accounting manager might report to an assistant controller. An assistant controller might report to a controller for a division. And that controller for the division might report to a corporate controller. And the corporate controller might report to the CFO, or probably does. Now, that's kind of a finance example, but let's use engineering because it's a little bit deeper. If you're an engineer, you might report to an engineering or to a senior engineer. A senior engineer might report to an engineering manager. Engineering manager might report to an assistant director of engineering, who might report to a director of engineering, who might then report to a senior director of engineering, who might report to an assistant VP of engineering, who might report to a VP of engineering. And the VP of engineering might just report to the senior executive VP of engineering. And then maybe to the chief operating officer, maybe to the president, maybe to the CEO. But it's the line of thinking that I really want you to think about in terms of thinking it through. Here's the job title, who most likely will report to, and then what I want you to do is go after, that particular person. So there's much more. There's all kinds of additional ways to find hiring managers. And maybe we'll cover a few more, but these basic tips hopefully will help you think about it maybe in a little bit different light as you go to try to find a hiring manager. one of the things I really need you to do is just really deduce what makes the most sense for you, for that hiring manager that you really want to focus in on. And it's based on that job title that you've applied for. Who most likely would it report to? Now, remember, I'm saying a hiring manager for a reason. Don't go too high. Don't go to the president or CEO, because as a rule, pushing that top down approach doesn't work doesn't work most of the time, and that's based on hundreds of people I've worked with in the past. Now, here's the last one about finding a hiring manager another way. Now, and let's just say you know someone at that firm, but they might work in another department. They may not work for the hiring manager. And certainly, you don't want to talk to HR based on what I've said earlier, but they might be in the tax department. They might be in purchasing. They might be in customer service. It might be a senior leader. It could even be an executive. And you might know them well or not so well. So if you're connected to them on LinkedIn, and maybe you even have their cell number, but maybe let's just say you're connected with them on LinkedIn, nothing hurts if you reach out to them and say, hey, Sue, hey, Bob, I just applied for this job. Here's the requisition number, and that's assuming you have it available, and just ask them, hey, could you look up in your system who the hiring manager is? I won't mention your name, but I just wanted to try to get a hold of that person to make an introduction. And many times, and I would say my hit rate on this is about 50%, they're going to respond. Now, the other 50% won't respond at all. And maybe some people that respond are going to say, hey, I don't know this person. Some people will say, I'm not comfortable, but some people will. And you'll be surprised at how many people will help you. And once you get the name of the hiring manager, then you're off and running. So again, it sounds so simple, but you got to be connected with these people at that company, and then you go make the request. It's a great way to find a hiring manager when you're trying to target, so you know exactly who to call. So there's many more advanced ways to talk to or find a hiring manager, but I want to cover a few this morning. And there's, again, much more than meets the eye when it comes to engaging the hiring manager and circumventing the black hole. But I wanted to touch on these points. So we're just about out of time. And for those of you that are new to the program, I did publish my first book at the end of 2019 called Optimize Your Resume, Do's and Don'ts the Sam Nova Way. It's now available on our secure website, and we'll pick up the shipping costs. Go to www.sam, like Uncle Sam, S-A-M, Nova, like the star, Novainc.com, www.samnovainc.com, and you'll see a drop down for the resume book. And you can also order it on Amazon in paperback or Kindle. We've got well over 400 positive comments to date, and it continues to grow. So, again, please follow up with me on LinkedIn. Keep an eye out for my upcoming public speaking events in the next few weeks. And join me on our next Optimize Your Career program on November 1st at 8 a.m. We'll continue with our Career Spotlight series with yet another person making a career pivot and why it has made all the difference in their career. This is Ed Samuel, career coach with Sam Nova. Our website, again, is samnovainc.com. If you'd like to reach me with a question, it's esamuel@samnovainc.com, or call our main number at 610-274-8214. Have a great Saturday and make it a blessed and safe one.